So, guys, let's start with Raptors and Nets series. Game one gets going tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. How do you guys see this series played out? How do you think it'll play out?
4 p.m.
Yeah, 4 p.m. Yeah.
Oh, 4 p.m.? Okay, my bad.
Well, so just off the top though, just the time slots that we got are the absolute worst. Like I don't know how it could have got any worse than this. I understand that there are bigger markets in the league, but come on, it's not until game four that we have at least a decent time slot where we're on at 6:30. But like it's 4 o'clock, 1:30, and 1:30.
Like, I mean, they're the defending champions, right? I mean, you're saying no one wants to see them in prime time. Like, I just found it's odd.
And a New York market team. I know they're not the Knicks, and they may not have that following that the Knicks or the Lakers would have, but it's still New York.
And like you said, Oz, most importantly, we're still the champions. Like, how are we not getting more respect? We finished second. We've run through this bubble 7-1, and they still won't give us respect. But you know what? I love it. I'm going to do whatever I can to watch these games. I might have to record some of them, watch them a little bit later. But you know, this goes back for years, and we've never gotten respect. So the fact that this is still happening, whatever, I love it. We'll win another championship, and we'll still be laughing.
Ironically, Nick Nurse was asked about the start times, and he said that in a bubble environment, he prefers early starts. As a fan, I disagree. But he says that when you're in a bubble and you're confined to your hotel room for the most part, sitting around waiting for a game in the evening is very difficult to do. You're antsy. You want to. There's not a lot you can do to keep your mind occupied or anything like that. You don't have your family around. You're stuck in that room for the most part, or whatever areas they're allowed to visit. But at least by having the game earlier in the day, they can get it out of the way. They don't have to wait as long. So it's you can take from Nurse.
Yeah, I can see that. And Jaylen Brown recently said something about, some guys just aren't built for sitting around all day and thinking basketball nonstop. You never get out of that basketball mindset. And I guess maybe there is something to it. And I guess Nick Nurse is probably right about that. I know if I was there and I had to wait until 7 o'clock, I'd probably be pacing around all day just waiting for that game. Like I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, it may not be a bad thing starting off, right? Just get going right from the word go, rather than watching teams and I can see that argument. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, we might as well get on to our predictions. I don't know if any of you guys agree, but I'm thinking this should be a Raptors win. I just don't know. I haven't decided how easy this is going to be, or if it's actually going to be a little bit more difficult.
Unless they go into this series the way they went into that Orlando series last year, where they lost the first game and Nurse got angry at them for not playing hard enough, and then they just came out and took the next 4 games. I don't see the Nets winning a game here. I mean, I'm looking at their depth chart right now. Dinwiddie's not in the bubble. DeAndre Jordan is hurt. He didn't come because due to injury. Kyrie Irving didn't come. Obviously, they don't have Kevin Durant. So you have someone like Karis LeVert, who's been fantastic. I mean, he's come into his own offensively. He's a tenacious defender. You got some good players like a Jared Allen, Joe Harris, but I mean, the Raptors have 5 guys like Karis LeVert, guys that can average more than 15 points and play tenacious defense. There's not a lot here. I mean, they don't have a lot of depth. They're going to play hard. They've played hard in the bubble. They've defended hard. They've gone hard at Lillard. LeVert really went hard at Dame Lillard last week, and Lillard gave him props afterwards. But the Raptors can only beat themselves. I really believe that if they don't take the series seriously, the Nets may win a game, may make it a little closer in some other games than it needs to be. But anything, if it takes longer than 5 games, I would be disappointed.
Yeah, and if you look at the Raptors this season and the one game that the Raptors lost in the bubble, they always struggle when a team is able to pressure them defensively, be up in their faces, and create turnovers. And the Raptors have been killing themselves a little bit in some of these games by turning the ball over a lot. I think they were near the bottom in turnovers for these 8 bubble games. But the Nets' best chance is to create turnovers, and they did a good job of it throughout the 8 seeding games. They were creating 14 a game, 5th best out of the 22 teams, but they were also near the bottom in defensive rating, 18th out of the 22 teams. So without playing defense, I don't think they stand a chance. Like you said, LeVert might steal a game. I don't think he'll steal 2. He's been playing great. You know, he even scored 37 against the Raptors in the 3rd game that they played against them. But just with this Raptors defense, I don't see it happening, and he just doesn't have the supporting cast. Joe Harris has been playing great. Jared Allen is also, you know, I think they expected maybe a little bit more from him. He hasn't been playing well enough, and I just think when you look at the teams up and down, man for man, there's no way somebody like Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot is even in the same level as some of these guys that the Raptors have. So I'm expecting hopefully a sweep. I don't think the Raptors, well, actually, no, they've never had a sweep. So at least a sweep, but if it's 4-1 and they get out without any injuries, I think they're happy.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit. So this is interesting. So both of you guys think it shouldn't go beyond 5 games, right? So let's talk about what are the risks. Like, so if Nets somehow make an improbable run in this series, whether they win or not, it's a different story altogether. But let's say they take the series to 6 or 7 games. What do you think that they would need to do to stop this Toronto Raptors team?
Can I say that there's nothing that they can do? No, but in all honesty, it really is about creating turnovers, getting easy points off turnovers, and not letting the Raptors defense get set. As if you're not making the Raptors turn the ball over, and you're not pressuring them and getting up in their face, and you know, getting a hand up on shots and making sure they don't have open shots. I don't like, without doing that, the Nets just don't have a chance.
The Raptors, if you had to pick one weakness that they have, is that they are prone to offensive slumps or runs in games where they can't score. I think that some of that is a byproduct of the fact that if you want to criticize the team for something, they don't have that clear-cut star who, in tough times, they can just give him the ball and he can just go off by himself. They are a good offense. I mean, I think there's some stat that came out this week that they were the first team in 30 years to have 5 guys average more than 15 points, which is quite impressive. If you have Fred, Norm, Kyle, Pascal, and I think the 5th would be Serge Ibaka. So they're a good offense, a very good offense. They share the ball, they take good shots, but they don't have that elite scorer, that elite offensive player that can create his own shot, that can, no matter what you throw at him. Like last year, they'd have games where nobody could score and Kawhi just carried them. That's the one fault that this team doesn't have. So if the Nets are able to disrupt that offense or force the Raptors into long scoring droughts.
So, for example, they kind of struggle with half court at times, right? So let's say if the threes dry up, does that pose a challenge?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just don't see it drying up for an entire series. There are too many guys on this team that can hit shots. So, you know, and that's where I think that the Nets might steal a game. It's when those threes just aren't dropping. So, you know, the Raptors not having a go-to guy that can you know, they can win a game for them. I don't know that that's going to affect them in this series. I think that's going to be more of an effect, have more of an effect on them in later series when you're in, you know, conference semifinals, conference finals. But against this Nets team, I just, you know, they just don't have enough to keep up with the Raptors, I don't think.
Yep, I would have to agree. A clear talent gap. The Nets aren't. I mean, they have an interim coach. So it's interesting. Like, they don't even have their real, like, the long-term head coach in place. So, I know from what I've heard, Jacques Vaughn has done a great job, and they played very well in the bubble. So that has to be definitely be commended. But I always wonder how players react to that interim coach situation. I mean, their pride, they want to win, but are they really locked in or as focused, and will they buy in the way they would to the guy that's going to be there long term? Interesting question. Jacques Vaughn didn't have a very good relationship with his players when he coached Orlando. Now, you can learn, get better, and I'm sure he has. But that's an interesting factor. Is without your long term head coach, your top guys, what's the thinking? What's the mindset like? Is it just we're going to go in and do the best we can, play hard? Or are they really going in saying, hey, we're going to win this and we don't care what anybody says? What's that attitude going to be?
So this is how I look at it. Okay, so yeah, you have an interim coach, but I mean, you're in the playoffs, right? I mean, for them, it's like anything they do here is gravy. So they don't have anything to lose. No one's going to blame them if they get knocked out for nothing. I think that sometimes it could probably play out to teams' advantages that you have nothing to lose. No one's going to say anything. Might as well go out there and see if you can create some, just set the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit.
If the Raptors pull a typical Raptors move and lose that first game, there's going to be a little bit of panic setting into the fan base, and the media is just going to be all over that. So, that first game, if LeVert comes in and just scores 40 points, carries that team to a win, you'll see a lot of people getting a little bit nervous because of that. You have that team who has nothing to lose. They just give LeVert, 30 shots and carry us to victory.
Yeah, I have a different take. Though, we have nothing to lose, so we're just going to go out there. But I truly wonder if a player really believes they have a chance to win, I wonder if they'll have that extra level of focus and pay it that extra, like that attention to detail that you pay when you're really, really focused, because you have the opportunity to do something special. Like, yeah, they can go out there, they play hard, they won't be under pressure, they'll be free, but will they be locked in and focused? That's my question, because in their minds, is it worth that? We'll go out there and just go really hard and make life difficult, but is it sometimes human nature being what it is, like, is it really worth putting in that extra effort now? Yes, they're professionals, they have to do it, but doing it is a different thing.
And there's one more factor that I've heard thrown out there. It's that these guys have been in the bubble away from their families for so long that, a team that most people are writing off anyways, they might just say, guys, let's just pack our bags and go home. Let's go home and see our families.
Yep.
But really, guys, I mean, then why even make the effort to make it to the playoffs? Like, why even play the way they did in the bubble? Like,
they were already in.
I know, but I mean, they still played well.
They did, and now, in fairness, they beat they beat Milwaukee, for example. Milwaukee didn't play their starters the second half, so you have a point. I mean, they did play hard, but
like they were what, like 5-3?
5-3, yeah.
And they beat a couple of good teams that weren't playing regulars. So let's keep that in mind. That they beat like a team like the Bucks, but Giannis didn't play the whole second half. However, you do bring up a point that why even show up and play hard? Well, it's different, right? Or were they playing hard? Or sometimes how media likes to create this narrative when an underdog team comes in and plays well. Oh, they're just playing so hard and together. Well, or was it that their opponents just weren't playing good?
I think it's always a bit of both, right? I mean, of course, we're not expecting them to, beat Raptors and go past the first round. But I just find it hard to believe for professional athletes, you're just going to mail it in playoffs.
I don't think they mail it in, but will that extra level of focus be there?
Yeah, it's finding that extra gear, and we've all gone through it. We're professionals as well, but there are days where you go to work, and to our employers, we don't do this often, but there are days where you just don't have it, and sometimes you mail it in, and it happens with professional athletes as well. And I think in this situation, personally, if I were there, I don't want to say that I'm not going to try my best, but if you feed in, if you start to believe the media and that you don't really have a chance, maybe you just say, yeah, you know what, we don't really have a chance. Let's pack our bags and get ready to go home. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could.
So before we move on from this topic, what do you guys want to see from Raptors in this series? So clearly, if they're such overwhelming favorites, not only you want to dispatch them as efficiently as possible, but you also want to probably tinker a little bit to just prepare for potentially, the conference semis and the conference finals as well. What do you want to see from Raptors? Like, what are the expectations from someone like Siakam now that he's probably, has to take that extra responsibility, which he didn't have to like last year with Kawhi being on the team?
I would say cleanups. They've had, to Ron's point earlier, they've had some issues offensively in the bubble. They've had a lot of turnovers. They've gone through scoring slumps or games where they just didn't score at a high percentage. Siakam has been very up and down. So in this series, what I'd like to see is cleaning up some of the offensive deficiencies they've shown, not turning the ball over, having some games where they really score at a high percentage. Having maybe a couple of Siakam 30-plus point games would be nice as well, just to get rid of that narrative that, he can't be the guy, or he's not a max player or anything like that. I think he is. So I'd like to see them get rid of that narrative and just go with it and just beat them and do it in a very clean, crisp manner, so to speak.
Yeah, and for me, it really comes down to three things. So it's definitely Siakam, getting him going. He like a lot of people have been on him, saying that he hasn't been playing great. So I do agree, but I also see the fact that they're coming off a long layoff. He needs some time to get going, and this would be definitely a good time. This is probably a good series because you're going to need him in the next round and the rounds after that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the bench has to get going, and we need everybody firing on all cylinders at the same time. So if you can get the bench going, get something from Norm, find some shooters. If it has to be, I don't know, whoever it is, you just need somebody to come in off the bench and start hitting some shots. And then the final thing is, and I think this is most important, it's getting out of there quickly and getting out of there healthy. You don't want anybody getting banged up. You don't want any important players to have to miss some time in the next series, or even carry a little knock into the next series where it might slow us down.
Good thing for Norm, he did have the last week he started to have a very good run. I'm just taking a look at some of his numbers here. 14 points against Orlando, 50% shooting. 16 points against Memphis, 50% shooting again. 21 points against Milwaukee, albeit not without Giannis, but everybody else. 53.8% shooting. 17 points against Philly, 50% shooting. And 15 points against Denver, 66.7% shooting. Again, I don't want to make too much of these games because they weren't playing teams at while the Raptors weren't playing teams at full strength, neither were they. I mean, neither was the other team. But the fact that he got a good rhythm going in those games is a good thing. Sometimes just getting into a rhythm, even if you're not fully being guarded the way you normally would, it just gets you that extra level of confidence going into a series. That, okay, I've seen the ball go down. I've scored. Yes, admittedly, I wasn't necessarily going against the team's top defensive scheme or wasn't being guarded as I normally would. However, I got some open shots and they went in, whereas a week ago, I had a lot of open shots and they weren't going in.
Yeah, and for me, just to kind of finish it off and recap and put a nice bow on everything, it's that Boston game that really stands out in my mind, where we couldn't hit shots. Boston was able to get up on us defensively, bother us a little bit, and I just want to make sure that we can iron everything out in this series to prepare for the eventual game against Boston, who I think we're going to end up playing, because that game really stands out, and I know they really pounded us. There are things that we need to clean up now before we can be able to beat them.
So lastly, what are your predictions? So, Pramit, I know you mentioned that you don't see Nets winning a game in this series. So, are you going with 4-0?
I will go with the Raptors sweep. Rarely do I predict, very rarely do I predict sweeps, even in series where there is a big talent gap, because it's just very difficult. I mean, a good team can just wake up on the wrong side of the bed, have a couple of guys under the weather with a cold, and you lose a game. It happens. But in this case, assuming both teams are playing at their full capacity, playing at their hardest, playing at their most focused, I think the Raptors are a clear-cut favorite. I mean, I'm looking at Joe Harris is their second best scorer. I mean, he's putting up Norm Powell type numbers, but Norm comes off the bench, and Joe Harris is starting with this lineup. So I think for me, I'd like to see a sweep and just get that monkey off our back of never having swept an opponent before. We've been swept many times. I'd like to sweep somebody.
Ron?
I would love to sweep somebody, but I don't think it's going to be this series. I say game 4, Karis LeVert comes out, has himself a game, steals a game for them. We'll still win, but it's going to be 4-1. And the game that the Nets win, I think, will be a somewhat less important game, because it'll just be one of those where, okay, we fell asleep a little bit. We gave them one, but we end the series afterwards.
So I'm also going to go with 4-1. I don't think Levert's going to steal a game for them. I think Raptors going to play one game against themselves.
Sounds like the Raptors.
Not these Raptors. Not these.
It's true. Raptors. Except against Orlando last year.
One game, but they after that, I mean, I don't want to say smooth sailing. The game 1 curse, it kind of ended last year. They won game 1 of round 2, and they won game 1 of the finals. So I think just by winning a championship, a lot of those playoff narratives, those the game 1 curse, the can't get it done, find ways to lose. I think a lot of those narratives are just gone now, even without Kawhi. But I think just winning that championship has gotten a lot of monkeys off the organization's back, and now it's just a matter of paying back favors. Like, they've lost to the Nets twice in their history in the playoffs. Time to get those wins back, just like they've done against Orlando and Washington. I would like to see them, and Philly. If you go back to 2001, they took care of the Sixers last year in a very similar fashion, by this time actually by hitting the buzzer beater shot. And I want to see the Lakers come out of the West just so they could take on LeBron in a playoff series and settle that score as well.